Obedience versus disobedience. You got to know some things about the culture, the way things were done in those days. Women had no power. They could not own property. They could not have assets, okay? And that's why it was very important to get married, because then you would have a husband and they would be looking after you. But in the household itself, the mother was the authority. She had control over her children, and she had control over her daughters-in-law. She was in control. And when she told them to do something, it was they were obedient, they did it. Now you understand why it's obedience versus disobedience. There was a famine in the time of Judges. Now I got to tell you about the time of Judges. Do you remember that's that book in the Bible? It's in the Old Testament. And it talks about a time when the tribes weren't really cohesive together. They had come back through out of Egypt, they'd come through Exodus, and they'd reconquered the land and they settled on the land. But each tribe was to itself. And every now and then something would come up. Somebody would try to invade. Somebody would try to take over power. And there would rise up what they called a judge. Now, a judge would be a wise person. But one of their main duties was to lead a military force against whatever was coming in. And they could call on the tribes, and maybe one or two, three, maybe all of them would come together, but it wasn't necessarily true. You understand? Each tribe did its own thing. The head of the tribe, the patriarch of that tribe, was the one in charge. Okay, that's the judges. There was a time of famine. Someone once asked me, they said, why did these people leave Pennsylvania and go to Kentucky? I said, well, there's reasons why people move. Mainly to survive. That's why people move. They're either looking for food. Nowadays, they're looking for a job so they can get food. They're looking for security. They're looking for peace. They're looking for something. So when you have this concept, there was a famine in the land, and therefore this family left where they were living and went to a foreign country. Moab was Moab was a totally foreign country. They even had a different god, Omesh or something. Okay? They went there and they were aliens living in this land. And they prospered. They survived. Now, there is a historical reason for this, because if you remember in Genesis, Abraham, he went down to Egypt with his wife Sarah when there was a famine in Canaan. This land that he was living in, that the Lord had given him as a promise, there was a famine. So he went to a place where he could keep his flocks alive. Egypt. He went down to Egypt. So you have this history. When there is a problem, people move. They will move and they will go wherever they can, because one of the primary things we have is an urge to survive, especially our children. We want our children to thrive. And you know they're not going to do it in one place. You will go to where they can. That's the background, all right? I'll get shorter. So now we have Naomi. First thing off, her husband dies. But she has two sons to support her. And they take Moabite wives. Now, this is a little startling, because in the book of Genesis, they're always sending back to the home country to get wives for their sons. They don't want them to marry the local girls because they're not the same religion, they're not the same family. So Abraham sent back to get a bride for his son, and Isaac sent back to get a bride for his son. You get this idea that they want to keep everything, but there's a reason why. The Moabites worshipped another god. They did not worship the same God. And they knew that this could be a problem. But these two Moabite women, they were good women. These three women, they worked in a household together. They respected each other. They honored each other. They helped each other in their daily tasks. So you can understand how devastating it was when suddenly their husbands died. That's it, folks. There's nothing left. It's just three women. Not the house they live in. Nope. Nope. It's not theirs. Can't have it. Nope. Well, Naomi's there. She's there. What? There's nothing. There's no. But she heard. She heard that God had had ceased the famine, and now there was food at home in Bethlehem. And she thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go home to Bethlehem. Now, you got to understand something. At least she would be living with her people, and she would be living with those who worshiped the same God she did. But that's all that she had. She wasn't sure of how she would be received. She'd been out of the country for years, 10 years or more, etc. And then she looked at her daughters-in-law, and she says, Okay, first of all, she blesses them. Now, when your mother-in-law blesses you as a daughter-in-law, you know she likes you, all right? And she blesses them. She says, return to your mother's house. She says, I'm trying to send you back to someplace that is secure, it is safe, and there is a chance you're going to get another husband. So you can establish your own home and have children. So she's looking at them to safeguard them. And she gives them this argument, and nope, we're not going anywhere. They wept. No, we're not going anywhere. We're not going to leave you. So then she gives them the next argument. So what are you going to get? I'm an old woman. I can't have any more children. Even if I had sons, you wouldn't wait for them to marry you. You would be too old. She says, return to your families. Return to your gods, your God. And there's a promise there. That blessing was, you will have a husband and you will have your own family. Well, Orpah said, okay. She wept. She kissed Naomi. Ruth didn't. Orpah was obedient. Her mother-in-law told her, go back to your mother's house. I see this as good for you. I see this as a way for you to have your own family, to have your own children, to be established. Security, safety, all those different words. We sometimes in this world, we take them for granted. I understand you had a shooting. How secure and safe did you feel back there? Okay? When all you hear is bullets and the police are way... Safety and security are very important. And she was trying to get Orpah to understand, this is what you can have. Ruth wouldn't buy it. Ruth clung to her and said, no. No? Once again, she said, follow your sister-in-law. Go back to your God. You'll find another husband. You'll have a family. Everything will be fine with you. I am going home. I'm going back to Bethlehem. And then you have Ruth's words. Where you go, I go. Your people are my people. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your God will be my God. It hadn't been up to that point. She had her own God there in Moabite. She also says, and when you die, where you die, I will die, and where you're buried, I will be buried. She's thrown her lots in with her, totally and utterly. I'm not going home. Nope, I'm staying with you. Why? Why would she be disobedient? Because she loved Naomi. And she looked at this woman, and she wasn't young, and she wasn't spry, and she knew that journey was going to be hard. And she knew that there was no promise at the end of that journey. No, she just wanted to go home. What she would find when she got there, nobody knew. But she cared for Naomi, and she loved her, and she was willing to give up her life of security in her mother's house and the possibility of a husband, good promise of a husband. She would stick with Ruth. Oh, that's a nice story, isn't it? Isn't that a nice? That's one of those feel-good stories. You know, they throw them in on the weekends in the news after you get through all the bloodshed, anger, and frustration and horrible things that happen. Oh, and here's our good news. This is a story that'll make you feel good. Yeah, it's a good story. What's it mean to you? I'll explain something to you. The judges, those tribes, they didn't actually get along together too well. You know how family feuds happen. Well, this was this family, and that was that family, and sometimes they didn't get along. So when you're talking about she was going from Moab to Bethlehem, and she was going to be traveling through this land, there was no law. There was nobody out checking on things. It was going to be a trail. And by the way, I checked to find out what is the distance between Moab and Bethlehem? Do you know how? 1,800 miles. And then I thought, well, that doesn't mean anything to me. So then I said, well, what's 1,800 miles from Altoona, Salt Lake City? Okay, folks, give or take a couple hundred. Let us consider that you are going to start walking from Altoona to Salt Lake City. You're going to go on a rough road. Hopefully, it's pretty definite where you're going. There are not nice people sometimes lurking along that road, robbers. You may not have anything, but they won't know it till they attack you and find out you don't have anything. And then there's those other things, wolves, lions, nasty animals. And where are you going to stay at night? There's not going to be shelter. There's not going to be any place. And where are you getting food? How are you going to get food? When Naomi said, I'm going back to Bethlehem, she wasn't going in a covered wagon, folks, pulled by horses. She was walking. She was carrying whatever she could get out of that house, her possessions, she was carrying them. She had 1,800 miles to travel. Not familiar ground and very dangerous ground. So when Ruth is saying, I will go with you, she means I will go with you because she recognizes chances of Naomi making it to Bethlehem, maybe not too good. There's too many problems along this journey. It's too long. It's too hard. It didn't stop her. What she said was, where you go, I will go. Where you dwell, I will dwell. If it's under a bush, I'll live under a bush. But more importantly, she said, where you die, I will die. And where you're buried, I will be buried. She didn't think they'd make it. She was giving up her life. She was giving up her security. She was giving up the promise of a husband and a future. And she says, no, out of my love, I am going to walk with you on this journey. I don't think we're going to make it, but I'm not going to leave you to take this journey alone. and she was disobedient, but she was disobedient out of love. 13th, in Corinthians 13, it talks about faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these is love. Love is so powerful. Love is so strong. It's amazing what love can do. It convinced Ruth that she should go on a journey that she knew. She knew she was going to end up in a grave. She knew it. There was no way under the sun they were going to travel 1,800 miles and make it. Not without money, not without provisions, but they set out. They set out, and she walked with Naomi. What's it mean? She was willing to give up her life. She was willing to die just to help Naomi. Where else have you seen this love? Where else can you see it? You can see it in Jesus when he said, I will die for these people in order to save them. You got to understand, Jesus, he didn't have to do that. And if you think about those chapters on his way to Jerusalem, on that last trip to Jerusalem, and he's talking to his disciples, and he's saying, oh, and they're like, oh, they're not listening. He says, oh, I'm going to be taken up, and I'm going to be killed, and oh, when you get to glory, can I be on your side? They aren't listening. And then he knows what waits for him. And he looks at Judas. Judas has walked with him for 3 years. Listen to him. Been his companion. And he knows he will betray him. He knows who will betray him. He looks at Peter, who's always the big, strong one, always. He looks at Peter and he knows that he will deny him 3 times. He's hanging out with these people. And they're not solid, because he knows that at certain points they will all fail. But he loves them. He loves them. And because of that love, he was willing to go to the cross. And you must understand this. At any point, he could say, hey, I've had enough of this. I'm out of here. He could have. Because if you remember when he was in 40 days in the wilderness, Satan took him up to the high pinnacle of the temple and said, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself off, and the angels will catch you so not one of your feet will touch a stone. And he said, no, I am not playing these games. No. And he was in the garden. He said, if this cup can be passed from me. He didn't say, Lord, take the cup. He said, if you could take this cup. Because he knew he's going to be humiliated, stripped of his clothing, mocked, tortured. That's what he faced. But he laid his life down. He gave it up. Just like Ruth gave up her life in order to walk with Naomi to her home, not knowing what they would find there. And she really didn't expect them to finish that journey. Why else would she say, where you die, I will die. Where you are buried, I will be buried. That's what she thought. But she didn't care. She did it anyway. What's the most valuable thing you have in your life? Do you know what the most valuable thing you have in your life? That's your time and your energy. Time and energy. People say money. No, money's not the most valuable thing. It's just stuff. When it comes down to it, the most important thing you have is time and energy. Ruth used her time and her energy out of love to secure a safe walk with Naomi back to her home. Out of love. And Jesus said, you must love each other. And you think about that love. You think about Jesus loving his disciples, even though he knew that they were going to betray him, they were going to deny him, all they were interested in was power. He still loved them. And that's why he calls you to love each other. No matter what you have to say about that person. No matter what you see them, how they act or their actions, their words, it don't matter. You got to love them. And you got to give up your time and your energy and your security sometimes to help them. Because Jesus laid down his life for you to save you. And he calls for you to be a model of that love to others. Now, I have a very modest proposal. Modest proposal. There's a John's Way up there. They're always looking for volunteers, time and energy. The disaster group, they always need volunteers. They're willing to give up their time and their energy to help other people. Do you get the phrase here? To help other people out of love. And let's look at the church itself. I know that there are boards out in the front asking, would you volunteer? Could you give up some of your time, some of your energy for the church out of love for each other to enable this church to be a church as we gathered together in worship? It's not hard. It's not like you're going to travel 1,800 miles. And you're going to be scared every time you turn around the corner and you don't know what's going to be there. Is it going to be a wildcat, or is it going to be somebody with a bat that's going to beat you to death? Hey, it's not like that, folks. But I'm asking you to give up something valuable, time and energy. And they are very valuable in your life because they get you up in the morning and keep you moving. They make your life worth living. Use them. Use them to do the Lord's work. Use them to show the love. The love. Like Ruth had love for Naomi. That love. She was willing to give everything up. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for a little bit. Just a little bit. And then you'll be amazed. It'll start growing. And only then can you comprehend the amount of love that the Lord has for you. In our frailty, in our failures, he still loves us. And we are forced to love each other in spite of their frailties, in spite of their failures. We must love. Because love will get us everywhere. It got Naomi to Bethlehem. Both alive. You want to know the ending? You got to read the book. It's not a very thick book. And it's really quite exciting. I'm going to go out and glean. If I ever pick the corn in front of my house, I'm going out and glean. And you're going to say, she's going to do what? I'm going to glean. And if you don't know what that is, you got to read the book of Ruth. And that'll tell you what it means. Okay? But I want you to remember that love is very strong, and it's a gift that the Lord has given us. And he asks us only to use it for each other.